Today, the market saw significant gains, driven by positive economic indicators and investor confidence.
There are moments in financial history when something important is said, and almost everyone hears it differently. A sentence is spoken on television, it travels across social media, it gets clipped, reposted, simplified, and before you know it, the meaning has changed. This week on CNBC, Changpeng Zhao, known to most people simply as CZ, said something that immediately caught attention. He said Bitcoin could enter what he called a supercycle in 2026. Not tomorrow, not next month, not as a promise, just a possibility. So the question isn't whether Bitcoin will go up or down. The real question is this: what did CZ actually mean? And why are so many people reacting so strongly to just one word? Because when you slow this down, when you strip away the excitement, something much more interesting begins to appear. And it has less to do with price and more to do with how the entire system is quietly changing. To understand why this comment matters, we need to take a step back. CZ is not a market prophet. He's not an economist in the traditional sense either. He's a builder. As the former CEO of Binance, he spent years watching money move across borders, across systems, across rules that were written long before digital assets existed. And over time, people began to treat his words as signals, not because he predicts the future, but because he's seen patterns up close. Bitcoin itself has always moved in cycles: early chaos, then adoption, then excess, then collapse, then silence, and then, slowly, it returns. Every major Bitcoin cycle so far has been shaped by something different. Early on, it was technology, then speculation, then institutional curiosity, then macroeconomic stress. Each cycle didn't just repeat the last one, it evolved. So when someone like CZ talks about a supercycle, it's not a claim that history will repeat perfectly. It's a suggestion that the rules of the cycle itself may be changing. And that idea makes people uncomfortable, especially those who rely on clean charts and familiar narratives. Online, the reaction was immediate. Some headlines framed it as a prediction. Others treated it like a promise. You saw phrases like, "This is the last chance," "Bitcoin to the moon," "2026 will change everything." At the same time, skeptics pushed back just as hard. They said it was marketing, or distraction, or another attempt to fuel speculation. And in between those extremes were regular viewers, people who've lived through past crashes, people who remember 2018 and 2022, people who don't want hype but don't want to miss something real either. That tension matters because it tells us something important. The market isn't driven only by numbers. It's driven by memory, by fear, by fatigue. And right now, a lot of people are tired of being wrong in both directions. So let's slow this down and talk about substance. A supercycle does not mean prices go up forever. It does not mean risk disappears. And it does not mean timing becomes easy. Historically, a supercycle refers to a long-term structural shift when an asset stops behaving like a short-term trade and starts behaving like infrastructure. What's different now isn't Bitcoin itself, it's the environment around it. For the first time, Bitcoin exists inside regulated financial products. It exists in institutional custody. It exists on balance sheets, not as an experiment, but as an allocation. Governments may still argue about crypto, but the pipes are being built anyway. Payment rails, settlement systems, compliance frameworks, quietly. At the same time, the global financial system is under pressure, not from one event, but from accumulation, debt, aging populations, currency trust issues, geopolitical fragmentation. None of these collapse markets overnight. They erode confidence slowly. And Bitcoin was designed for exactly that kind of environment. Not chaos, but uncertainty. Changpeng Zhao's comment wasn't about a price explosion, it was about maturity, a market where Bitcoin stops reacting to every headline and starts behaving like a long-term hedge people don't talk about every day. That kind of shift doesn't look exciting at first. It looks boring, and boring is usually when real change begins. Here's the part that rarely gets discussed. If a true supercycle were to happen, it wouldn't feel like the past. There wouldn't be endless hype videos. There wouldn't be everyone bragging at the same time. Because supercycles don't rely on retail excitement. They rely on quiet participation. Pension funds don't announce entries with fireworks. Sovereign entities don't post screenshots. They move slowly, carefully, and often invisibly. Another overlooked detail is volatility. People assume a supercycle means wild upward movement. In reality, it often means the opposite. Less dramatic crashes, fewer total capitulations. Not safety, but stability. And stability doesn't create viral moments. It creates indifference. If Bitcoin becomes something people hold and forget, not trade and tweet, that would be a bigger transformation than any price target. That's what most people miss. The shift isn't upward, it's inward, from spectacle to structure. So what does this mean for the years ahead? In the short term, nothing magical changes. Markets will still move. Narratives will still swing. Fear and greed won't disappear. In the long term, though, something subtle may continue. Bitcoin could slowly detach from the emotional cycle that defined its early life. It could become less about timing and more about positioning. That doesn't guarantee success. It doesn't eliminate risk, but it does change the question people ask. Instead of how high can it go, the question becomes, what role does this play in a world that feels less certain every year? That's not a trader's question. It's a system-level question, and those take time to answer. Changpeng Zhao didn't announce the future on CNBC. He didn't ring a bell or draw a line on a chart. He made an observation. And sometimes the most important signals don't sound dramatic at all. They sound calm, measured, almost unfinished. A supercycle, if it ever arrives, won't feel like a celebration. It will feel like quiet acceptance. When something stops needing to prove itself, it stops being exciting. And that's often when it starts becoming permanent. The real story here isn't about 2026. It's about patience and whether we're finally entering a phase where less noise means more meaning. That's something worth watching, slowly.